Hi, folks. Welcome to our first stream of our week of streams featuring women at PagerDuty for Women's History Month. With me today is Ercen Kindred, our Chief Diversity Officer. Ercen, welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, I am so excited to being here, and thank you just for the invitation. I appreciate it, and I'm honored to kind of sit down and spill the tea.
Excellent. I've got my tea. I have tea right here. Good to go.
A water bottle.
Excellent. Good to be hydrated. So for folks joining us on Twitch, there is a comment box there. If you'd like to leave any comments for us, you do have to click through our code of conduct there. If you're watching us on Twitter, welcome. If you want to like the tweet there so we know you're watching, we'd love that. If you're joining us later, we'd love to hear your comments and feedback, and you can get in touch with us there. So let's kick off. Ercen, you're our Chief Diversity Officer. You joined us last year. What does a Chief Diversity Officer do for a company like PagerDuty?
So first off, I think Thursday will be my 7th month as an official Dutonian. So I am excited. And for me, when I think about, just holistically what Chief Diversity Officers do, we're really, culture creators. Right. So we come in and we assess the culture. We both assess it from an internal landscape and an external landscape. And then we figure out what's working, what's scalable, and then where are the gaps and how do we address employee sentiment, industry sentiment in addressing those gaps.
That's awesome. Yeah, excellent. For a global company like PagerDuty. So we have offices here. We're in the US. We've also got lots of folks in Canada, and we've got folks in Australia and folks all over Europe. What concerns are there for diversity, equity, inclusion across all those locations and all those potentially different cultures?
So the first thing that I noticed, within PagerDuty, we definitely have a need to think, act, and execute globally. Right. So when I first came on board, I had a conversation with our ERG leads, and I used the word international, and it kind of sent everyone in the Slack channel in an uproar. And then I had to scale them back and say, now let's be clear. I'm a brand new Dutonian, so you are my first experience with engagement. But let's look at the word international versus the word global. If I'm asking you from your geographic location, then I'm not saying that the US is the base. I'm saying that your location is the base. So what I noticed is that we have, we're filled with change agents, and with that can come certain triggers. So I realized that in coming into this environment, if I was going to think global and act globally, that I had to do a lot of listening. And listening not just from a US lens, but listening from the different perspectives of Dutonians that live in London, Dutonians that live in Australia or Canada, and now Lisbon. And so standing up, in this need to have this global identity, that they too have to think globally. And so ID&E it goes beyond, when you're thinking globally, it goes beyond race and class, and it goes into different demographics like, social economic needs, class-based needs, status needs. So it's really one of those things where I'm educating Dutonians on what it means to have a global culture and build up global equity and belonging.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there's folks here that are change makers, right? Like there's a lot of enthusiasm internal to PagerDuty for all kinds of social justice issues and all kinds of things like that. So you're finding folks are really enthusiastic about the things that you're working on?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most enlightening things and the most engaging things about being a Dutonian is you never have to ask anyone to get motivated about change, right? They're just like, there's a need, they're going to come to you probably before you come to them. I think one of the areas that I'm really leaning into is how do we harness that desire for change into a corporate platform? Because there's definitely a rubric for how you do things when you are in the public view, but there's a whole different landscape when you are thinking about PagerDuty as a change agent. There are other impactful triggers and other impactful resources that you have to consider when you're thinking about impact from a global standpoint and from an organizational standpoint. So that's the point in which Dutonians are going to have to lean in, because sometimes that's going to mean that as an organization, we may not be able to publicly comment on something. We may not be able to publicly engage. However, we support a platform that gives Dutonians a voice. So if you are affiliated with an ERG, that doesn't stop the ERG from standing up that platform or standing up that ideology. But it's really making sure that we have very thoughtful presence when we think about the organizational brand versus our own individual brand, both in PagerDuty and outside of PagerDuty.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like, there are definitely tech companies that are a little bit more outspoken or sort of look for the spotlight when something kind of spicy happens. Like Mark Benioff at Salesforce has made sort of no bones about sort of his belief system and some of those things. And when you've got folks who are, some organizations are looking for that we don't want to be political, we don't want to make these kinds of statements, and we have a community at PagerDuty we represent, like some of the folks, like just their existence is political in some places. How do we find that balance and strike that so that folks don't feel abandoned or alienated?
I always look to our core values. And so when I tell people, when you come into a family, that family stands up a understanding or belief system for you to fall into until you decide to have your own family. Same difference when you come into an organization. When you sign your paperwork and you're looking at the documentation, they clearly tell you what their core values are. At that point, it's really your individual choice to say, these are the things that I'm going to support while I am at work. These are the things that my organization believes in. So I tell people, look for organizations that reflect who you are, both personally and professionally, so that when you get into that environment as an organization, we're going to make space for change that supports our core values. So if there's something that doesn't support our core values, but collectively as an organization, we decide we're going to lean in, great. But if it's not, then you understand that we're aligning with our core values. And then if we need to readdress our core values, we will do so. But I think one of the standout things that I respect and admire about Jen Tejada as our leader is that she is not afraid. Yeah. She is outspoken. And that gives room for everyone else to find their voice within PagerDuty, right? So as the CEO, yes, she's going to make statements that impact the entire organization, but you really can take a cue from her lead to say, if she's speaking out on this, then it must be safe for me to do the same. But let me lean in and let me figure out, what does that mean from a individual contributor? What does that mean from a leader, from a leadership? Because saying it from each different perspective has a different level of impact. So you want to make sure that when you're exercising your voice, I always have to remember that when I'm working at PagerDuty or I'm on LinkedIn, I am still PagerDuty's Chief Diversity Officer. Yeah. And so that, with too much is given, much is required. And so we always have to make sure that as Dutonians, we do carry that brand, and so that we act on the brand that we carry.
Yeah, definitely. And as folks are looking at core values, like the story in tech for the last 6 or 8 months has been like Great Resignation, and lots of folks are moving around and checking out different companies and different experiences and opportunities. What stands out for you about PagerDuty and some of the other sort of companies in our cohort that are really speaking to, supporting women, supporting other underrepresented minorities in tech, and how those things are shining through for folks?
For me, is that we really are a people-first organization, and that we act and own. We really do step out and say, if we're going to create change, we're actively going about the business of figuring out what change makes sense for our employee base, what makes sense for our brand, and then how are we making change that is going to impact great talent, innovative talent, and allow people to want to stay here. one of the things when I first came on board, you start, taking one-on-ones, and you're having listening groups and focus groups. And once the surveys come out, you're reading sentiment. And how do I probe in if our women goals are X and we're at Y? How do I help with talent acquisition to get to that goal? What are the things that I believe that our women's groups are asking? And so we are rolling out a new employee resource group platform. And as part of that, we're going to have listening groups with each employee resource groups to really get an understanding of what's impactful for you, because what looks impactful to me may not look impactful to you. But I'll give you a teaser and say that I'm big on mentorship to sponsorship.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely look for opportunities to see programming around that that will be offered. And I'm currently meeting with executives right now to get a sense for buy-in and actually, standing up and understanding for what I mean when I say mentorship to sponsorship.
I was just going to ask that, like, for folks who are only maybe familiar with the mentorship terminology, sponsorship's a little bit different.
Exactly. So I'll give you a scenario. So you have an individual who is looking for career mobility, right? That is a hot topic, I think, with everyone right now. So if I'm looking to advance my career and you mentor me, now you've enriched me with new talents and new perspective, but I have no place to go.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Well, I just made you great. Well, you're great, but if you can't scale, either in opportunity or, cross-functional projects, then what do? The Great Resignation, and you leave. But if you have sponsorship without mentorship, now you've sat me at the table, but now what next? I don't know what to do. And so I believe that if you have mentorship without sponsorship or sponsorship without mentorship, you've done someone a half justice. I'm into the holistic, full throttle, acceleration and development of people. And that comes from taking someone and saying, here is where you excel. Here are areas for improvement. Here are the gaps. And then once we address those gaps, now let's put it into play. Let's see how you've stood up the information or the experience you've had in an atmosphere that's new to you. And I'm going to help walk you through that. So the sponsorship, the mentorship piece never ends. It just you open the door and someone coaches you while you're in the room. And that's huge, because I can tell you from my own personal experience, I've had mentorship without sponsorship, and I had to figure it out. It made the process not enjoyable. So that's where imposter syndrome comes from, because you've been put someplace and you don't really know what to do and you don't have the resources. But when you have that mentorship with the sponsorship, then that's where I call it the secret sauce. That's where the secret sauce is. And that's where you see those employees that stand out, those employees that are recognized as top talent or rising stars. Yeah. It's because they are invested into their career and they're invested into the organization. And so I'm looking forward to standing up some programming that is going to support that and offering that to our women's groups.
No, that's fantastic. Because like you've got the folks, the individuals who are invested into the organization, and they're going to put the time in and do the work under the mentorship. You want the organization to stick up for them too, right? And be supportive of those folks and have them move forward and benefit the organization in different ways. Yeah. So that's a more symbiotic relationship there.
Exactly. And I think the approach that I am taking, I think Dutonians will find very exhilarating, because it's something that will advance the organization and gives your perspective on the organization to senior leadership. And so it's one in which you are really showing senior leadership what your innovation skills are, how strategic you are, and where you see opportunities that they may exist or may not have identified themselves.
Yeah, that's super interesting too. It's like, so I've been at PagerDuty about 1.5 years, and I've met a lot of folks who come from, like, our CAP program, our internship program is amazing. It's like the interns come from all over the place. Like, It's not just university students. We've also got like some folks that are returning to their career or changing careers, or they've taken some time off to be caregivers, or they've gone to a boot camp. And like, there's a lot of opportunities there that are completely different from any other internship program that I've worked with at different companies. And like, just that perspective, that one lens on it is it seems so empowering, right? It's so innovative from that perspective that we're just ready to look anywhere for that innovative spark, that, you know, opportunity seeking person who is looking for new things. Is really amazing.
And it's interesting that you brought that point up, because I'd like to kind of tap into that. So when we say that we are a people first organization and we're doing things to become inclusive, and we are building an equitable world, that is a tangible example of what we mean by that, that we're not looking just traditionally at our internships and going just from HBCUs or just from top tier colleges, but that we're really looking at the career base and, you know, what top talent looks like and where to find innovative talent. And that comes from a diverse landscape. If you only had people that were from, you know, Ivy League schools, and you'd be getting one genre of mindset. But when you are saying, listen, we have a plethora of mindsets out there, let's tap into all of them, then you come in and you build this CAP program that is super inclusive, full of ideas and innovative, because you have diversity of both, you know, it could be classification, but also of mindset. And I am huge on diversity of mindset within a tech organization, because that breeds innovation.
Yeah, I think it sets us apart from some of our peer organizations that way. Because like you said, like, we're looking at, for folks who maybe aren't following every single breath that PagerDuty takes, like, we do have some things in the pipeline that we're looking at, you know, expanding the product a bit, looking at other places where sort of that real-time response level is helpful or needed. And you can't do that if your entire org went to the same school and did the same classes
and has the same perspective, because now you don't see where the gaps are.
Yeah, so that gives us an innovative edge to look at things there.
Definitely.
For folks who are pivot a little bit and talk about folks returning from, say, COVID, right? Like, we're thinking about especially the impact of the pandemic on women. We've talked a bit on some of our other content here at PagerDuty about digitization of work and burnout and things like that. But from a diversity standpoint, like, COVID's had a real impact on the role of women in the workplace, the amount of women in the workplace, has sort of set things back to my childhood, really, I guess, at some levels there. What kinds of things are you thinking about for folks who are looking to come back after having taken 2 years off to be an impromptu teacher?
Yeah. So one of the things I will say that I noticed right off the bat is that our leadership pivots very well as it relates to COVID. So when we had the first cycle of the initial, you know, COVID pandemic, there was a HR platform that came out, and we received X amount of days, our quote unquote COVID days. And then as the pandemic kind of settled down, you know, we thought we were coming through the cycle, but then there was Omicron. The organization had no problems pivoting from where we were going, and that was, you know, standing down those benefits in 2021 to immediately saying, no, we're going to give you the additional benefits in 2022. That is huge, right? Because what people don't understand about benefits, that's a financial investment that the organization is giving. Those are not sick days. Those are in addition to days. And so that's number one. If you're a mother coming back, you have an emotional need to make sure that you maintain the security within your family, both medically, physically, emotionally. And so the fact that you are going back into the workplace and having to combat, oh my goodness, what if one of my kids gets sick? Knowing that you have the flexibility really does do something for your psychological safety. And then making sure that, you know, we always talk about psychological safety within PagerDuty, within the leadership team, but making sure that you're really looking at the mental stability and the mental health of your employees. So not just saying, how's your career going, but how are you doing? Mandi, what's your day looking like? Are you okay? And being flexible, because that is what's going to make people want to continue to lean in when they know that the pressure is not there to perform over and above, but that giving what they have and that what they have is good enough is important. And then secondly, I just believe in creating relationships with your manager, your leader. If you don't have authenticity within that relationship, it just won't be, you or them won't be able to grow your experience. And because we are definitely into culture creation, I'm just going to say, as an SLT leader, I know that I do it with my employees, is that their well-being is priority number one for me. I want to make sure that they feel that they are in an environment, whether it is remote or in an office, that they feel supported. And so that is both personally and professionally. And I think when I think about coming out from the workforce and not knowing what a new workforce is going to look like, I want to be in a place that's going to support me. And I want to be in a place that is going to be flexible. And yes, it's going to be demanding. And yes, you are going to need to innovate and perform and all those things that other organizations are doing. But I love the culture creation that we create here. The fact that we're able to stand up our voices here and have those voices be heard, I think are things that, as a woman, when I think about, what organization do I want to work for? I want to work for an organization where my emotional safety and my psychological safety is equally as important as my performance, because it drives my performance as a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about psychological safety, like it's included in our trainings around the actual product. Like when we talk to our customers, we talk about creating a psychologically safe environment for folks to talk about what went wrong. Why did this incident happen, without judgment, without accusatory language? We call it blamelessness, and all of these things come into play in the actual functioning of successfully using PagerDuty as part of a learning organization. But behind the scenes, like it's just as important in the rest of the context of how your team works together to have that psychologically safe environment for folks who don't present as the dominant demographic in tech, to be able to say, I feel like we're on the wrong path here. Can I ask a question without, being teased or made fun of? And having that safety and those supportive environments for everyone to come to the table.
Yeah. If you are a leader anywhere and you are not leaning into employee sentiment, I would suspect you're an organization that has very high attrition, especially in this era. And what I will say is that, the days pass where emotional intelligence was not needed to become a leader. You were able to scale and perform and produce. And as long as the revenue was there, it was great. There was never really a focus on employee sentiment, psychological safety, or anything that involves emotional intelligence. And where I do suspect that people who still adopt that principle are probably struggling in corporate America, whereas we have a culture that is focused on emotional intelligence and just psychological safety and empathetic mindset and empathetic leadership within our organization. So I feel like we're farther ahead than other organizations. Now, granted, we are, in a thousand plus global organization. So I think it looks a little differently than us, but we're also building our global scale, right? So if emotional intelligence is a skill set that our leaders need to have, and it's demonstrated through our existing leaders, then as we're looking for top tier leadership and top tier talent, I'm looking for those individuals that have a high understanding of emotional intelligence and can actually execute on that. They lead by that. And so those are some of the probing questions that I ask when I'm interviewing is, how are you with your emotional intelligence? And explain to me what emotional intelligence means to you, because those are becoming catchphrases right now.
Yes.
And so I try to do a little bit of digging and probing to make sure my understanding and their understanding are equivalent. But I definitely believe that as an organization, and especially as a leader in this new era, this new thinking, this post-COVID mindset, because it's real, that you have to have an empathetic lens to anyone who is coming back into the workforce, and especially if they're coming back into the workforce from having to deal with COVID, either having had it personally or having to manage it within their families.
Yeah, definitely. And the news is changing every day about the potential impacts of long COVID and some of the physical and even mental impacts of that. And it's a vascular disease, and that includes your brain, and how that ends up affecting people and could affect people for the long term. And the long-term impacts, I think, are going to be stark for some people there. So
yeah,
it's interesting. When we think about the women that we work with and the other folks we have on our teams, what can we do to help advocate for women in our organizations? Like we mentioned sponsoring a bit earlier. If I'm in a place, I'm an individual contributor, so my soft power isn't to a place where I can like put somebody in front of the executive team and say, this person is great, don't you need them for things? What can we do to help support each other at sort of the individual contributor level?
So I love the word you use, your soft power. I'm going to adopt that. So if you hear me say it, I'm like, Mandi gave it to me. But listen, it is about being an advocate at all levels, right? So if you've got a teammate who is full of great ideas, but somewhat hesitant to speak in, meeting formats or small group formats, exercise your space and give that space to them. Or say, hey, Rashawn, I know you and I were talking and you had this amazing idea about X, and set that warm transfer for that person to then yield the floor. Ask someone, to partner with you. If you know that let's say you're a member of the Women's ERG and you've been talking about a need that you have in your department, get together and try to find a solution for that, and then bring that to that leader. And if you don't have that relationship with that leader, go advocate to get a cross-functional support from a leader and have that leader bring it to their counterpart. Because sometimes as a individual contributor, we just have hesitations, right? Yeah. We're like, our manager has all of the power, but really a good manager shares collective power, right? So I'm a believer that we all just play a role, and one role without the other makes the spikes on the wheel lopsided. So if you don't have a very circular wheel, then you're going to have gaps. And so I try to create space for everyone to feel like they contribute to the overall decision making. We use just the RACI format, so everyone has a position in the RACI, and letting them know that your position on the RACI is equally as important as each one. And so it could be something small like that. But I would say the biggest thing as an individual contributor is focus on solutions. If you bring a solution to a leader, I guarantee they will not turn it down. If you bring a problem to a leader, the leader's going to have to do what? Ask more questions, lean in, try to figure it out. But if you bring a solution, at least they know that you're committed to change and committed to progress. And that makes that leader want to lean in, because they know that you've already thought this thing out. So now you are a consultant on the RACI scale instead of just being informed.
Awesome. Yeah. And I had never heard of RACI before I joined PagerDuty. So for folks who are kind of haven't heard that one, but it's RACI, and it's folks who are responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Correct. So it's your level of stake in the game for the project that's going on. Are you responsible for it? Are you just informed about what's going to happen? So it's an interesting, we all have stories where you've got someone who loves a pickup meeting. Like they just come to your meeting and like are just interested, but have no skin in your game. And but they're just hang out. And like, now there's a place for them. Here's your column, here's an I, and here's what we're going to tell you. So yeah.
And for that curious Dutonian, that really does give space to just show up. Like, yeah. I know I've been in meetings a lot of times. I just had one on Friday, and I did not say a word. I literally just kind of sat there. And then I had to tell myself that is because at this stage of the RACI, you are in the informed scenario. Now, at times you may switch over to consultant, but right now, if it's not directly impacting you, don't derail the project you feel like you have to contribute. Being informed does not mean that you're not participating. Being informed means that you're being educated.
Yes.
So I'm being educated on what's going on this project so that when it's time for me to be consulted, I can give a informed opinion about what I'm consulting on instead of just giving a hypothesis that's based on nothing factual.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much better than just being a spectator. Like you are there to be prepared for when it's your turn to
exactly.
Super helpful. And for those of us who like the plan, like I like the graphs. So yeah, having those columns there is super helpful. So yeah, definitely. So we're just about at the end of our half hour here. Are there things that, I mean, we see at PagerDuty, we know we're doing a lot of work around, you know, helping our diversity and equity and inclusion efforts internally. Are there things that you're seeing out in the market that other folks are doing that you are hoping to bring into PagerDuty? It's something that you find interesting that someone else is doing right now?
That's actually a great question. I'm actually having a meeting later on tonight with some of the top tech organizations in Southern California. And then at the end of the month, some of the top CDOs in Northern California to talk about that very thing and to talk about, you know, what's important to us as an organization, what's important to us personally. As I mentioned before, I am hyper focused on how PagerDuty can make a contribution to the Ukraine war in a fashion that really does reflect like what our core values are without having it to become political, right? So I, you know, have thought of a couple different ideas that I'm going to, you know, share with some of the other CDOs. One of them being the William Morris Endeavor organization in Southern California and Northern California. We're doing a meeting with a very large tech company whose name shall be anonymous, but I think it's a household name. But just having thought leadership. One of the things for me that, you know, Jen, one of the reasons why Jen brought me on is so that I could be the voice of diversity within the marketplace for PagerDuty. And so I am keen on filling that mandate, but really making sure that it's not just for a branding purpose, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that we're creating an equitable world, that we're contributing to not just the tech organization, but the world as a whole, because we're a global organization, but we want to have global impact. And we wanted to support things that really do showcase who we are as an organization. And so my landscape is always global. It's always, if it's not global at the time, that initiative is then scalable. And so I'm searching for new ideas that are going to help get us there, but get us there in the brand that is reflective of PagerDuty.
Yeah. I think things have been, it's been super interesting, right? Like PagerDuty has a lot of internal support for volunteer work, for being active in your community. That's been a little bit more difficult with the pandemic. I mean, you're not doing bake sales for fundraisers and things like that. Your pancake breakfast, haven't had those in a while. But the support for, we've done volunteer projects with the Trevor Project and some other folks in the Bay Area. And I know Atlanta and Toronto both have groups that they work with there. It's been super interesting to see that community impact with the corporate sponsorship there, with hands-on. Like we join a call and we like crunch data, or we do whiteboarding or other things. Yeah, fascinating.
I give, you know, high accolades to our, you know, social impact division. They have just done an amazing job at just another example how PagerDuty lives out their core values, that while we are creating social impact, it always has a diverse lens to it. Yeah. And so we are standing up change really with the needs of those who have been underrepresented in mind, the needs of those who have a need to have their issue brought to the light. And so we are definitely working collectively, you know, with social impact to make sure that, again, our reach is global, but it has a regional touch to it. So what we may stand up in London may look very different than what
Absolutely.
we stand up in Australia, but the theme is still the same. It's just the execution is different. And so those are the things that, when Olivia and I are really looking at how do we create this equitable world and fill the charge that Jen has given us, that it's bigger than just the day-to-day of what we see, but making sure that what we're developing is definitely scalable. So yeah, a great partner in Olivia.
It's wonderful. The thoughtfulness really shines through with those projects. It's been really great. So for anybody out there who's listening, do you have any parting words about being a diverse person in tech, how folks can move forward or ask questions or understand what they're looking for? And I'll put a little plug here. We have lots of openings at PagerDuty. So if you like what you've heard so far, you can apply there and give us a shout out. We'd love to have more folks join us at PagerDuty. So.
Yes. Well, listen, if you are an underrepresented individual in tech or really in any workspace, but you have talent, own it. Right? If you have talent that you're growing, go get the resources that you need. You are the champion of your career. And sometimes champions need great coaches. Sometimes champions need great trainers. So go out and advocate for the resources that you need. Find organizations that reflect your core values and beliefs, and make sure you're looking at their core values and beliefs, and the two marry up so that you don't come into an organization and 12 months from now, you're thinking about leaving, right? I would say look for an organization that you can really see your future in, that you stand up a vision for where your career is going, and that if that career span is 3 years, then bring your leadership on and let them know, like, listen, I think that the lifespan of my career here is 3 years. So this is what I'm thinking, because that allows that leader to plan for that, right? Mm-hmm. You may come into the organization and find that, you know what, I thought it was going to be 3 years, but I think it's going to look like 5 years. But that enables you to have a very cohesive relationship with your leader that's authentic. If you're looking to come to PagerDuty, I would say, if you're looking for an organization, we are an inclusive organization. We are, a high velocity, fast paced organization that likes to innovate, that believes in its people, that believes and supports change, and that believes that every Dutonian has a voice, that we want to hear it. And we want to make sure that we are creating a culture that is not only inclusive, but that is authentic and stands up equity and belonging.
Absolutely. 100% on board there. Thank you. Ercen, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. And I just look forward to the outtakes. I hope people have enjoyed this. And if you're in need of a great organization, I would say click on that link below.
Yeah, get in there. And if you're hesitant, if you're not sure, if we've got the kinds of things that you're interested in, join us the rest of the week on the channel. We're going to be hearing from some SRE folks tomorrow. We've got software developers on Wednesday. Thursday is going to be an amazing security and compliance panel. We've got some folks from internally. We've got some folks from GitHub and Elastic that are going to join us. It's absolutely amazing. And then Friday, we're going to wind up with our product managers and product marketing folks. So we're covering all kinds of things this week. But Ercen, thank you for being here to kick us all off this week. This has been wonderful.
Awesome. Well, have a great week. And thanks for all the impact that you're creating. This is great.
Thank you so much. Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining us. You can follow us here on Twitch. And if you are following us on Twitter, thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you never miss a stream. Follow us at PD Community and PagerDuty on twitch.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you'd like to be on our stream, email us at community-team@pagerduty.com so we can feature the cool things you're doing. And don't forget, check out all of our global events on our calendar at pagerduty.com/events.